Morning, my name is Jon Witt and this is a Hatha yoga class. So I'm going to do a hand-free practice, meaning I won't be on the hands often. People that I've taught over the years, some people have a hard time being on the hands. Not to say that you shouldn't be on the hands, but to work up to the hands is a good goal to have. But some people just, the arthritis in their hands, complications in their wrist, they probably won't be on their hands. So I'm going to do poses on the floor, and it'll help in rolling and getting the abdomen stronger. And then I think what a great pose is really working up towards a plow. So today's class is working towards a plow. I'll give you some alternative methods to help you, because maybe plow isn't the position for you. But to manipulate the spine, greater weight really is required. So rabbit pose is a good pose, but I'll be doing things that will help mobilize the neck, and then that'll help. But it really comes down to getting into plow, getting into shoulder stand, is having hip flexion and also having the strength of the abdomen to get the legs up. So those things are all needed to be in place in order to do those poses. So I hope you're liking these classes. I've been loving teaching them. We had a bit of a vacation, so I'm happy to be back. Let me know how the classes are going. All the classes are uploaded onto my YouTube channel, Jon Witt. So if you're a subscriber, thank you. And if you're really, again, benefiting, share it with your friends, your family. It helps support the channel. And all my classes are donation-based. So if you'd like to make a donation, my PayPal and Venmo is jonwittyoga, and there's other ways that you could be making contributions as well. So you could always message me, and I can tell you as far as how we could do that. So how you're going to start today's class is on your back. You don't need a lot of space, but I'm going to roll around a little bit. I'm going to move around. So if you have some extra space, fantastic. If you don't, just being on your mat, I'll give you some options to help you in strengthening your abdomen and, again, getting into a plow. So we'll come onto your back, and once you come onto your back, you're basically going to just have your knees bent. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my lower back to the floor, and with my lower back into the floor, I'm trying to bring my ribs in. And then with my ribs coming in, I'm just going to come up a little bit with my head and my shoulders, just into a kind of a low position. And I'm just going to hold for a few seconds. And then I'm going to bring myself down. Now, if you're strong and you want to stay up, you could stay up. I'm going to come up for a couple of seconds, a few seconds. This is enough of a lift to increase the strength in your body. Coming up higher, you could certainly do that. You can come down. And then one more time, I'm going to come up. And then when I'm coming up, I won't, not that I'm forcing my lower back down, but I want to stay in more of a posterior type of tuck, just as if you were in plank pose. So this is, not everybody can do plank, and this has similar benefits. So bring yourself down, and then when you come down, you can just have the hands over the elbows, and just when you lift up, think of lifting, we're going to lift up into bridge, but think of lifting more from the upper portion of the spine, so the higher portions, and then we're going to carry on into the lower back. So you're going to lift through the chest as opposed to lifting from the hips. So there's a difference. So as you're lifting through your mid, your lower back will start to lift, and then you're lifting through the pelvis. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my upper back into the floor, and your mid back, and your low back, and your pelvis. And this is really what it's like when you come out of plow, but this is way more gentler. So I'm going to lift up through my upper back, my mid thoracic, my low back, and my pelvis. And then when I come down, I'm going to do the same thing, but now I'm moving through. I'm trying to keep my hips up. So my upper back is moving to the floor, my mid back, and there might be a point, like I stop moving. So it's probably about T12 or T13 for me, it doesn't move as well. So I hang out there a little bit longer, and then as I move past those facets, as it starts to move again, might even crack or pop. Then I'll carry on, right? But it's very easy to just lift through the pelvis. So try to lift last time. Try to lift through the upper back. Try to lift through the mid back, and then lifting through the lower back, and then lifting through the pelvis. And it's good to kind of see what kind of lift you need in the pelvis when you're doing bridge. This is obviously much easier than doing wheel, but I'm doing it more in terms of how to manipulate your thoracic spine. So then I'm going to bring my upper back down, my mid back, right? And again, now that I'm a little bit more warmed up, it's easier to move. And then I'm just going to come down. Now what I'm going to do is a little bit for your neck is take your head off the floor and just support the head as little as you need. And then as you support the head with the hands, that's if you need it, is move the head towards the left shoulder. So just move it towards the left shoulder, then bring it into the middle and bring it to the right. And you can really start to feel like areas of your rib cage or your spine that don't move as much, and then bring it back into the middle and then just bring it down. So just bringing it down. Again, I'm going to do one more of those, but you could do it with or without your hands. So I'm lifting my head off the floor, and then I'm moving my head towards my left shoulder. And I'm never, going beyond a healthy range of motion, or I'm trying not to. And then I'm going back into the middle, and then I'm going to the right, and then I'm bringing it back to center, and then I'm bringing it down. Then just turn the head to the right side, or the left, or the right. We'll do both sides, right? You can bring it over to the right, and then you can bring it back into the middle. Now you don't need a block, but I'm gonna use a block here. I'm gonna take the block straight up over my shoulders, and then I'm gonna squeeze into the block, and wherever it gets difficult for you, you can hold that. You wanna keep your lower back down and towards the floor, and with the ribs being in, you're really extending up through the arms. So maybe the arms can go fully overhead, and that's okay if they don't. And if you're really compromised in posture, your head could be supported on something. I should have said that earlier, but it could be on a towel. And then I'm going to squeeze in, and then I'm bringing it straight up over my shoulders. I'm going to do that one more time. So keep the belly in, keep the ribs in, and then bring it overhead. And as you bring it overhead, squeeze into it. Now I'm just going to show you an easier option, is just have the block behind you and then take the arms onto the block. So if you're really tight in your shoulders, your arms could look like this, right? It doesn't have to be me holding the block, right? But I'm going to take my feet off the floor, and then I'm squeezing my belly and my ribs in. This is the beginning position, so this might be like what you need to hold. But if you're able, you're going to bring your feet down just to the floor, and you could hold this. The down position is way more difficult to hold. Then you can take the feet up, and then pulling the ribs in, the belly in, the feet down, and then taking the feet up. And then one more time, bringing the feet down, and then holding. I'm squeezing into the block, and then I'm going to take the legs up, and then I'm going to bring my arms. I'm just going to take my arms up overhead and just bringing my hands down. So bring the feet down again, press down through the heels, lift through the hips, generate a good lift in the pelvis. Think someone's pulling your tailbone in between your feet. So you're getting you could even feel your butt. It should be squeezed. Doesn't have to be incredibly hard, but if you had a herniation before, it helps in stretching out the lower back. So press down through the heads of the shoulders, backs of the shoulders are down, and then roll your upper back, into the floor, low back or mid back, and again, then you're down. And again, maybe you're moving way slower than I am. And then again, where it gets kind of stiff or tight, take your time, then bring it down. And then what we'll do is we're going to use the block again, but now the block is going to be in your right hand. So with the block in your right hand, I'm going to squeeze into the block with my hand. So this is really good for your wrist, very good for your strength of your forearm. And say the block isn't just small hands, right? It could be a can of soup or something like that. I'm going to have my left leg straight, and then I'm going to look to my left hand. I'm going to roll to my left hip, and then I'm just coming up a little bit through my right shoulder. My head's coming up. Right? But you get a good twist through your back, but it's really good to strengthen the obliques. And then you can roll back with your head and your shoulders to the floor. And then I'm going to do that one more time. I'm going to roll to my left side. I'm lifting up. So this low position is deceptively good, right? It's very beneficial. I'll show you a fuller range of motion at some point, but this is a great place to start. And then roll back onto your back. And then have your right leg straight, have your left leg bent. Switch the block into the left hand. And just push the block up. And this is, you're protracting your shoulder. When you're pushing, you're protracting. When you're pulling back, you're retracting. So you're protracting in your shoulder here. So take your right arm out to the right, roll to your right side, and focus on the musculature on your right side, above your right hip. And one side might be more difficult to contract. You need to be active through your right leg. I'm making a fist with my right hand. Not that you have to do that, but that can help with activation. And then roll back on your shoulder and just try to relax in between. And then contract through your right side. Roll to your right side. Press through the left hand, right? And then roll back onto your back. And then as you roll back onto your back, you're going to have your left leg straight and your right hand is going to be up over the block. Now I'm going to do a fuller range of motion. Maybe you can't do this. Try not to use momentum to get up because it's not really going to benefit you. In my opinion, it's better to stay low. So I'm going to roll to my left side and I'm going to contract through my belly and then I'm going to sit myself back up. So I'm up, right? And then so if there's too much weight in my hand or my arm, it's hard to come up. So you got to use more strength to get lighter in your hand, lighter in your elbow to get down. So I'm sliding out. And then as I'm doing this, I'm trying to make it slow. I'm looking up towards my block, then coming to the elbow, and then slowly rolling back onto my back. And then I'm going to have my right leg straight and my left leg bent. I'm going to roll to my right side. I'm going to contract through my belly and then sitting myself up, right? And then the block sits directly over the shoulder. And this eventually can be a weight. And these are just basic Turkish get-ups. So again, if I'm contracting through my abdomen, I can limit how much weight I have in my hand and in my arm and getting in my elbow. And then I'm strengthening the whole right side of my belly. And then I'm coming back down. And then as I come back down, I'm going to bring the block down. I usually use weights when I do these, but they're good with the block. You don't have to have a weight. So just have the feet underneath the knees again. Have the hands over the elbows. Lift the hips off the floor. Ground down through the shoulders. Right. Slowly roll the upper back into the floor. The mid back will come down. Right. And then you could simply roll to one side and sit up. We'll do some stuff in a seated position. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll a little bit. I'm going to roll my back into the floor. So just some gentle rolling. And it's good on a carpet, good on grass. Some people really need like a soft surface, like a big thick mat. So you could use those things. And then I'm going to roll all the way up. And then when I sit up, I'm going to come onto my knees here. And so I'm on my knees and I'm going to sit back on my feet as best that I can. So you can put something in between your thighs, in between your feet. It's good on an elevated surface. You don't have to be as I am. If you have some additional blocks to support yourself, this helps. Like you could bring more weight into your hands in getting here, and then you can limit how much weight you have in your feet. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up onto my toes and then sit back on my feet, right? And then I'm going to come back and sitting on my feet again. The more you manipulate the feet, the more things will get easier for you in terms of flexibility. So come back up onto the toes, sit back on the heels, spread the toes. Right? This is really uncomfortable, and that's why I'm kind of keeping it short for people. So you can untuck the toes, and then you can sit back on the feet. Say you're like, wow, this one position is really more beneficial for me. Of course, you could hold that one position longer. You know, the duration that I'm using, it could be 10 to 60 seconds. You know, there's no perfect number. I'm going to come back onto the toes again and then sit back on the feet. See where you lean. Where you lean is most likely where you're already flexible. Not that that's bad, but you want to get the weight into different areas of your feet. You know, one foot will be very flexible, one foot will be very stiff, and it carries on. You know, it's a chain reaction. You know, so if your foot doesn't move very well, it's going to affect the knee, it's going to affect the hip, and it'll affect the spine. So I'm going to untuck the toes, and last time I'm going to sit back on the feet. Now when I'm sitting on the feet, this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to have, just because I said no hands, I'm going to be on my fists. So if you don't have the length in your arms to get your hands down, you could bring your hands on to your blocks. So when you're on your blocks, your fist, it's much easier in the wrist. So when I'm up here, what I'm doing is I'm pushing through the toes and I'm taking my knees off the floor. But I'm bringing the weight into my feet. So, this is something you can't do, then you're just sitting on the feet. But if I'm sitting on the feet, hug the ankles in and then let them relax out. So this is a much easier version. Just hug them in and then let them fall out. Most likely they either fall in or out, depends on the person, right? But if they fall in one direction more than the other, it will definitely affect your knees. So it's good to bring better order into the feet and the ankles. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come off of my feet and then I'm gonna stretch the legs forward just so that you're not on your feet so long. And then just have the legs forward and circle the feet in a circular motion. So just get the feet to circle around, circle in the opposite direction. And then point and flex the feet. And then just have the hands on the thighs. We're not going to do a lot of these, but just contract your thighs. And then relax, contract. Really basic, but very good for your knees, especially if you're a person that can't squat, can't do deep knee bends. Relax the legs, contract, relax, contract. You can really work hard in pressing the legs down here. Relax, contract. Like anything, the more concentrated it is, the more detailed you get in terms of practice, the more beneficial it is, rather than just doing it, right? Relax the legs, contract last time. Again, think like there's weight on your thighs and it's pushing down, and that'll stretch out the backs of the knees, get more into the legs. So I'm going to pull my right leg back in space, just pull it into my chest. This might be all that you can do, right? So just sit upright. I'm hugging in, just a one-sided, one squat, but it'll help stretch out the right side of your back. And then bring the right leg forward and then take the left leg back in space. You can take the left arm around, you can hug it in. You can use your arm strength to squeeze in. You could look up, you could look forward, you could look down. You could be moving your head in something like this. And then I'm going to bring the left leg forward, and what I'll do is I'll take the right leg back. Now I'm going to try to get my armpit on top of my knee and then take the foot up. So this is, again, stretching out your back. So again, because I said we're going to do plow today, or we're going to try to get to plow, is that maybe this is your plow. Like this stretches out your back, not nearly as much, but it's good. And it's something that you could use as opposed to, say, when I do plow. If I want to stretch the leg up or forward, I can do that. What I'm trying to do is keep my leg up and in. So I'm trying to keep my leg, I'm not using my arms, I'm trying to use my arms as little as possible and keeping the leg up. And then I'm going to go back to bringing the knee and the armpit together. So lifting myself up. And then bringing the right leg down. I'm going to take the left leg back in space. I'm going to get the armpit and the knee together. And with the armpit and the knee together, just pulling in. And then what I'm going to do, is try to organize myself as best that I can. I'm trying to lift more through the front of my body. And with these, whether you have kyphosis or scoliosis, you really start to understand how your spine sits in space. I mean, you could get an X-ray or an MRI and really understand it that way, but you'll really feel it over time. You'll see like, oh, this is why I have an elevated shoulder. This is why my pelvis is a little distorted, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if it's affecting your digestion, it's affecting the way that you live your life. Then it's something that you would want to correct more. So you can stretch the left leg forward and up. And then what I'm doing is I'm trying to lift the leg up more without the use of my hand. So I'm trying to keep it up. Not that this is important, but like I said, you can't lift it up into plow. It's hip flexion. This is hip flexion. And it's also the hip flexion strength, how much compressed strength do you have. And then you can bring the left leg back down, and then as you bring it down, you just sit cross-legged. And as you sit cross-legged, take the left hand to the left, reach the right hand to the right, explore moving forward in space. Like move forward, move yourself back in space, just kind of feel the angles. They might all be beneficial, right? But I express to people, like, you always do the pose the same way. It'll give you results to some level, but then eventually it might not, and then eventually it may actually cause harm. So it's good to have a bit of diversity. You could take your right hand behind your head, and you can lean back in space. So very good for the neck. Take 2 more breaths. Use your abdomen like we were in the very beginning of class, and that's what's adjusting the pose more. And then take the right arm up to the right. You can bring yourself back up, and then recross the legs, and then take the right hand to the right side, reach the left hand to the left, lean forward, feel the effects of leaning forward, feel the effects of being in the middle, feel the effects of leaning back. Right? They're all beneficial. But you might be like, oh, that's interesting, and that's something that I need to hold more. The head can hang down. It could be hanging down the whole time. And then you can take the left hand behind the head if you wanted to. So I'm moving my head back in space. Right? I'm lifting up. And again, like I said, you can very well, with side bending, And it's more obvious with twisting, but with side bending, it's I guess it's more conservative, and it's not going to be as much leverage as say like a twist, but it'll help. But like I feel it greatly around my pelvis and into my rib cage on the left side, or going to my right, and then you can take your left arm up and you can bring yourself back up. So just sit for a couple of breaths, hug the legs in, look over the right shoulder, look over the left. It's okay if the shoulders are skewed, right? You can look over the right, you can look over the left, and then just bring your head down in space. As you bring the head down, stretch out the back of the neck. So this is much easier. What I'll do next. I'm gonna do more like a rabbit, and I'll do some cat cows before, and that could be your, in the cat it's flexion, and that's what you're doing in rabbit. That's a continuation of rabbit, and then plow is a continuation of rabbit, right? So you can come onto your hands and your knees. Again, because I really want to hold true to not being on your hands, but you could make your hands into fists, which in my opinion isn't really on your hands because your hands aren't flexed, your wrists aren't flexed. So push through your hands round your spine into a cat stretch. Look forward, look up, back bend. You can exhale, you can round your back. You can back bend, you can lift the chin, you can lift the chest. And you can exhale, you can round the spine, round your back. And then just come onto a block. So sit on a block, second level, 2 blocks, right? These are good ways. Just so that those of you that aren't going to do rabbit, just so that you have an option. This is great. This is a good position. If I just bring my head down, this is the effects of, plow and rabbit. But the more, people with kyphosis, they think like, oh, I should never bring my head down. But actually bringing the head down is what's going to help lift the head up more. Because you're bringing your head further than what you typically do. So you bringing your head down will certainly help you lift it up and extending it. So I'm going to come down on my hands and my knees. So I like to grab the feet. That's just what I do. I do more plow than rabbit, but it's a great option, and you can really feel how you can manipulate the spine, kind of like what we did in the very beginning of class with the bridge, the rolling bridge. So I'm going to hold my heels and bring my head down, like I could be in balasana, right, child's pose. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to come more into the top of my head, right? This is the beginning of that. Just take a couple deep breaths, and then just bring your hips down, and say that was a lot. Just bring your arms down beside you. So you're like, oh, that was good. I'm interested in more. I'm going to come back up onto it. I'm going to come onto my head, and then I'm going to walk my knees to my face, and then lift the hips up. I can keep walking in. Take 5 deep breaths. And then when you come out, release the feet if you have them. Bring the forehead to the floor. Just relax here. Open and close the hands if you're holding the feet. Right. And then you'll sit up, and we're going to sit in a Baddha Konasana position, just more of a neutral position, just to get off your knees. So have your feet together, have your knees wide, sit up nice and tall. The more you stretch out your back in flexion, you'll really be able to sit up more. There is some contradiction to rounding your back too. You had to be really careful with it. You've had osteoporosis. You could, in my opinion, I think at some point you could eventually do it. but you got to be really careful because you could fracture your spine. You're more likely to fracture your spine in flexion than extension. So more in a forward bend than in a back bend. So I'm going to bring my right hand into my right thigh. I'm lifting my thigh into my hand, and as I lift up, I'm creating a good lift to create space in the hip. And then as you create space in the hip, it's elongating the right side. My left shoulder is lower. You can see it's picking up the right side. And then I'm going to bring the right hand down, and then I'm going to bring the left hand. You have long enough arms or your knees are up high enough, you could use your elbow. You could be on your fists. Like I said, not everybody can flex their wrist. So I'm lifting the leg into the hand, and as I'm lifting the leg up into the hand, it's creating more and more space in the hip. So take a couple deep breaths here. Breathe in, breathe out. And then what I'm going to do is release that, but taking the legs up, I'm going to push the knees out into my arms. I'm going to look up. So extending. And that, at first when you're extending in something like this, it might actually feel like you're stuck, like nothing's moving. But things are moving, they are tight and they won't move initially. But as you hold it, you really start to feel what is moving. And for you, it may be more of your neck. Initially, some people won't be able to lift the head, so that's the first kind of piece of it is being able to lift the head. Well, then over time, you'll be able to lift the thoracic more, which is a different set of bones. They're shaped differently, so they won't extend nearly as much as, say, your cervical or even your lower back. And then you can bring the head back to neutral. So I'm going to have my right leg in, and then I'm going to take my left arm across, and then I'm going to look over my right shoulder. So initially just twist a little, twist some of the way. Don't twist all of the way. Lift yourself up in space. As you lift up, then you can look over the shoulder, and as you look over the shoulder, it's very rare that I'm going as far as I can go. I say that almost any class that I teach, because I want people to know that a yoga demonstration is very different than a yoga practice. So if I'm doing a demonstration for people want to see they want to see perfection. They want to see really clean lines. That's, in my opinion, not always the best form of practice for longevity. You can look forward. You can bring the right leg forward. You can take the left leg back in space. So a deep flexion of the knee. Now say you can't flex the knee. You could take your arm underneath and pull it in, and that'll help with the flexion of the knee. You can take the right arm around. Doesn't have to be armpit to knee, but it's a good technique to adjust the body more. And like I said, maybe you want to just twist some of the way. And as you twist some of the way, then you can really articulate through the upper back. Right? Trying to lift up. And as you lift up, then you can look over the shoulder. As you look over the shoulder, broad shoulders. When I remember, I'm thinking that I'm expanding into the space that's around me. So, even a small space, you can really gain a lot of space in your body by teaching your body to move in various directions. And then you can turn forward and you can release the arm and the leg. So we're going to go back to rolling back onto the back. If you have a blanket, you can have that with you. You could fold up the mat eventually, but I know, many of you or all of you are in your homes. Notice if you have if your living room is carpeted and then the next room is not carpeted, well, that floor is a little bit higher than the other floor, right? So if your shoulders, just speaking of shoulder stand and plow, if you're on the carpeted area, bringing the head back will give you a little extra space. So if you had a really long neck, then you'd want more height, and then that takes the pressure out of the neck. I do both. Sometimes I elevate myself, sometimes I do not. And how I'm going to teach it is not like, I'm not just going to have you back in it and, holding for 2 minutes or something like that. I'm going to just touch upon it, and then you'll see like how you can use it a little bit more in terms of your advantage. But this is something that if you really do need more manipulation of the spine, flexion can be a really great outlet, especially if you have a difficult time twisting and back bending. So before we come down, is what you can do is you're going to roll on. So just hold your knees, your thighs, come into a low boat type of position. Again, some people have more of a protrusion or like an extra kind of, their tailbone's really kind of jagged. So maybe this isn't good. Then you're all the way on your back. But I'm coming back. I'm trying to control it as best that I can. And then as I go back, right, I could use my hands, of course, right? But I'm going back nice and slow. Once I get my lower back to the floor, once I get my mid back down, right? And I'm going to bring my head down and my shoulders down, and then I'm all the way down. But I'm going to roll onto my left side. As I roll onto my left side, these are for your hip flexors. I could support my head. Like I said, you'll need hip strength. So I'm going to pull my right leg into my chest, trying to bring it in. Now, if you lack hip flexion, you can hold your shin here with your hand and you can pull it up, still using effort. And then I'm going to take the right leg out, and then I'm going to bring it around. I'm going to pull it in, really pulling the knee into the chest, and then I'm taking it around. I'm going to bring it in again, pulling it in, and then out. And then one more time, I'm going to bring it in, pulling the knee in, taking it out. If any of these angles are, say, difficult for you, I think they're good to practice. So say right around here, some days it's a little difficult for me, so I use a little bit more of my hand. These are great standing. And then you can roll it out. And then you can roll on your other side. Just so that you can see me better, I'm going to go to the other side, but you can just roll over on your other side. So as I'm on my right side now, I'm going to pull my left leg into my chest. I'm bringing it in. You're really weak through this. You could do more repetitions, right, than I'm doing. Also really nice is if you have some ankle weights. So I'm pulling the knee into the chest. I could use my hand, trying to get the knee closer to the left shoulder. And the more you do with your hips, the more it's adjusting the upper body. So hip opening or hip development is really, really beneficial unless you have hip instability. Then you just want to get your hips more stable. So I'm pulling the knee into the chest. I'm moving it out. And then I'm going to do one last one. I'm going to pull in. And then again, if I need more assistance with my hand, I can pull the leg into my chest. And then I'm going to make that circle around. And then I'm just so that you can see me a little bit different. You have a strap, right? You can use a strap. I'm going to use my hands initially. So I'm going to stretch my right leg up. And then I'm going to bend the knee. And then I'm going to straighten through the right leg. And then I'm going to bend the leg. And then I'm going to take it up. Now I can point and flex the foot. Take the hand a little bit higher on the leg. And say this is a lot for you, or stay where you're at, or stay down. Your head can be down the whole time. But I often find people, they never try to grab their foot. And some people try to grab it the first time they practice, which isn't bad, but it's either one or the other. But it's good to reach up higher. It's good to strive more, and then you could come down. Right? It doesn't have to be a full 10 breaths or 20 breaths. It could be just a few seconds. So you could come up, you could grab the heel, you could grab the foot. Like I said, I'm trying to bring my leg closer to my face, with the strength of my hip, not just my arms. Not that that's bad. That's actually really good for your arms and your shoulders. But what will get really weak for anyone that gets older are your hip flexors. And that's what's going to stop you from picking your feet up when you walk. So you want your hip flexors to stay strong. All right, so you can lean back. And then you can bring your head and your shoulders down. Keep the right leg in, bring the left leg in, and then send the right leg away. Hold the hamstring if you'd like. You could hold anything, right? But I'm going to take the left leg up, flexing the knee, and then I'm just bending the knee, taking it up, and pulling it in. If you have tight hamstrings, you probably have weak hamstrings. The more strength you get the hamstrings to be, the easier it is to stretch them out. Take your hands higher up on the leg. You can point, flex the foot, right? And then you can come down. Right? You don't have to hold the whole time. But you can come up. As you come up, right? You can grab the foot. You can hold the foot. You can pull it up into the chest. Right? Pull in, and then as you're up, right? Try to lean. Just let your weight fall back. Expose the leg a little bit more. And then you can come back down with the head and the shoulders. And you can bend the left knee. Have the hands over the shoulders. Lift through the upper back. Lift through the mid back. Push through the heels of the feet. Lift through the pelvis. Get the pelvis to lift. Stay up with the hips and roll the upper back into the floor. The mid back will come down. The low back will come down. The pelvis will come down. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the block with my thighs here. And you don't have to, but it just makes it a little bit more, there's more leverage in what we're going to do. So I'm squeezing into the block, which is really good for your adductors. And then I'm going to do some twisting before we do the plow. So, the more mobile the spine is, the easier it is to take the legs back into plow. And same too with back bending. If you didn't want to do plow, you could do camel. What I'm going to do next, you can change the order. It doesn't have to be this order. But I'm going to look to my left hand, and then I'm going to reach for my right hand, or my left hand with my right. I'm squeezing into the block, and then I'm going to roll back onto my back, take my right arm up to my right, and then I'm going to reach over for my left hand. And then I'm going to roll back onto my back, and then I'm going to reach for my left hand with my right, and you'll see very well which side you have a difficult time twisting to. Do both. Roll back onto your back. Roll to your right side, reach for your left hand. And stretch out your back. Roll back onto your back. Reach for the left hand with the right. Try to go beyond the hand. Try to really go beyond with the right arm, beyond the left. And then roll back onto the back. And then as you roll back onto your back, reach for your left hand. And then roll back onto your back, and you can take the block out. So as you take the block out, so this is the time that, maybe you want to roll up your mat or fold up your mat. I'm just going to do that just as an example. But like I said, there's times that I usually don't. Depends on what type of surface I am. Like, again, you could get creative with your blankets, but I'm folding up the mat, and if you needed more height, you could fold it again. So I'm going to do that just as an example. And then I like the rolled up side. So the shoulders are what's on the mat, right? It's the shoulders that are what's on the mat, and the head is off. And often people have the shoulders beyond the mat, and then it's actually counterproductive to what you're doing. So what I think can be helpful for you is when we take our legs up, is that you could bring a chair behind you or do it in front of your sofa, because you might not have the flexibility to bring your feet down to the floor. So that's one thing you could do. And like anything that you're learning for the first time, get familiar with it. And if it's something that you can't do, it's fine, right? But if you sent me a video, I'd be able to help you with that. So I'm on my back, I'm over, and I'll teach you what type of series I'm going to do. So when I go back here, just press down through the shoulders, just lift up into bridge. You want the shoulders to be pulled back in such an exercise like this. And then just bring your hands down beside you and pull your knees into your chest. So what needs to lift up are your hips, but you don't want to throw yourself back. I mean, if you have to throw yourself in the pose, in my opinion, you shouldn't be doing it yet. It's okay that you don't do this. But if you see how much I can get my legs into my chest, the more you can bring it in, the easier it is to take the legs back. If you're here, it's very hard to get your legs back. So that's why I did the sequencing that I did. So I'm going to roll onto my shoulders. I'm going to pull back, and then as I pull back, like I said, I'm up high, just as an example, right? So I'm back here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate my feet, which is going to make it easier on your hamstrings, and you can bend your knees, right? Your legs don't have to be perfectly straight, but your hands can be on your hips or your back. And just for the sake of this video and to help you, it's easier to lean into one shoulder, most likely. So I'm thinking about looking to my left foot, and then I can get my left foot further down. Not that that's important, but then I can think that I'm looking to my right foot, and then my right foot gets down. But to really stretch out your back, having your legs asymmetrically is pure gold. It's like, oh my gosh. Because you won't be able to do it with the legs symmetrical, and that's why it's good to be in asymmetrical positions, not just symmetrical positions. But I'm taking my legs to the left, I'm taking my legs to the right. As you get familiar with this, then you can add more time, but I just think it's almost unfair for people to be symmetrical, because one side will, and this is good. I'm more in the classic type of plow. I could have my hands down, I could interlace my fingers, but the spine is most likely deviated. So in it being deviated, it's like, well, you got to find ways to manipulate it so that it's actually healthier. So to come out of this is you can bend the knees, roll your upper back into the floor, right? Roll, 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 roll. Take your time. Maybe you're already out already. As you roll, I think of more weight in the hips. And then as you take your time and coming out, there's areas that just are not as mobile. That's what I'm really taking my time going over. And then as I'm pulling in, I'm bringing mid, lower, more like T12, T13, and then getting into the lumbar, and then down, just, hips are down. So just turn your head, once you're all the way down, just turn your head to the left, turn your head to the right, turn your head to the left again, and then back to the right. And then take your right leg into your chest. You could adjust your mat now if you needed to or wanted to. And then cross your right leg over your left. And then you're just basically twisting. So, as you're off here, like with a pose, like anything that's a little bit more deeper in nature, your approach in countering can be more subtle. So I'm just doing this just to, not that I don't feel like the effects of like, whoa, I just, was in a deep flexion in my back, like, I don't know, some people do it and they're perfectly fine, like deep flexion and deep extension. But I think the majority of people probably need, not both ends of the spectrum. Again, some people can do it. It's not necessarily dangerous. And then you can roll back onto your back and then have your right leg straight, cross your left leg over your right, and your left arm is out to the left. And then you're just kind of turning and, twisting, falling back in space. And say you need more stretching of your legs. When I'm teaching like a public class to like beginners, that's more of what I do, because the stretching of the legs and the hamstrings and the hips is one of the pieces that's missing from them taking plow, right? But like I said, rabbit could be a great alternative. And if you divide the poses up between the days, you really see what works. If you always do it all together, it seems like all of it works for most people, but you can be a little bit more understanding with the poses when you divide them. So like say you do rabbit Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then you try to do a shoulder stand or a plow on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. That could help, like knowing that. And then come back into the middle. Have the feet underneath the knees. Have the hips lift up. As you lift the hips up, just a basic bridge. And then what I'm going to do is you could be in a shavasana, right? You can come down. You could come into a bridge. So I'm in a low bridge and my left leg is straight. So when you're in shavasana, if your feet turn out quite a bit, especially if you have like a knee injury or, you have lower back stuff, try to get your feet to be more straight. And you could, if you got a strap, make it into a loop, and put it around your thighs. And that's really, really good for your hips, your lower back. It's very good for your knees. I just don't have a strap with me right now, so I'm not doing that. But I just see so many people turn out, and it's either really, it could mean nothing and it's not bad, but it could also be really hard on the knee or the lower back. So just because we're getting close to the end, try to relax, let yourself go. I'm not going to do a long relaxation just because we're running out of time, but you can obviously spend more time on your back. So if you're a person that's eventually going to get up, take a few more deep breaths. And then what you can do is, if you're coming out of this, if you're bridged like I am, you can take the block out, bend the knees, roll to your left or your right side, and then you can sit yourself back up. And then when you sit up, you could get your props together so that you can sit really well. And just think like, we did most of the class in your back. So it's more subtle. It's not as popular, I think, for most people doing a practice like that. But in my opinion, there's more depth. Like you can really, what I did today, you're going to adjust the body more than you would, say, doing like a lot of triangles or a lot of warrior twos, which, is a great practice. And it's usually what you get in most yoga settings. Again, not that that's bad, but to really manipulate the spine, this is a very basic way of doing it. And say you've been, kind of beating your head into the wall, like, so to speak, for like back bending, twisting, side bending, and flexion will help with your extension. So I hope that helped. I hope these classes are really benefiting you. Let me know how they're going. Again, any donation is greatly appreciated. So many people I haven't been in contact since the pandemic. So I hope you're well. Take care. Let people know about the class. Let people know about my services if you can. It helps me support more people. I want to be as much of a support as I can at this time. That's always been my goal, is, to help people as much as I can through the healing benefits of yoga. There's many great ways of training. There's many ways that I train personally, but at this time, yoga is a great fit, especially if you've been sedentary and you haven't been moving around. This is a good outlet. It's a great start. Say you want to start playing tennis again, this is a good starting point, and then eventually you can get into your sports or whatnot. All right, take care, be well, and hopefully I'll see you soon. Tomorrow I have a class, 10 a.m. It's on Zoom. You would register for that class at jonwittyoga.com. All right, much love.